How Amish wives preserve an entire year's worth of food in a single week without refrigeration. But here is the part that nobody talks about. The real secret has nothing to do with the techniques themselves. Stay with me, because at the end of this video, I am going to reveal the single decision Amish wives make that makes their entire preservation system work. And it is something that would shock most modern homesteaders who think they understand old-world food storage. If you are curious about what your great-grandparents knew that kept their families fed through the entire winter, and if you have ever wondered why Amish kitchens never run out of food while most of us panic about grocery day, then you need to watch this all the way through. Before you do, though, I want to ask, have you ever tried to preserve food without electricity, or are you still thinking about it? Drop a comment below and tell me your experience. And please, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deeper into the forgotten skills and daily wisdom of plain communities that prove you can be completely self-sufficient with knowledge instead of technology. Wait, this part is important. I need you to understand something fundamental before we go any deeper. The reason Amish wives can preserve an entire year's worth of food in just 1 week is not because they work harder than you, and it is not because they have some secret recipe or hidden technique that modern people have forgotten. The real answer is something much deeper. And if you want the complete, detailed breakdown of exactly which preservation methods work best in which seasons, the exact timelines, the common mistakes that cost families money and safety, and the master preservation calendar that Amish families have perfected over generations, then you need to grab the complete guide that I have put together. This guide breaks down every method: canning, salting, smoking, drying, fermenting, root cellar storage, with step-by-step instructions and the exact timeline for when to start each one. It is available in the description and pinned in the comments if you want to go deeper than this video can take you. But let me start with the foundation, because this is where most people get it wrong. The Amish do not preserve food the way most people think they do. We imagine one intense week, canning jars bubbling on the stove, sweat on the brow, total chaos and urgency. But that is not what happens. The truth is that Amish wives start their preservation work almost 12 months before that week arrives. It begins with the very first seed they plant in spring. Think about it. When a modern person decides to preserve food, what do? They go to the farmer's market or the grocery store, they buy whatever produce is available at peak season, and then they try to preserve it all at once. That is backwards. An Amish wife, though, she started planning this in January. She walked around her property and decided exactly what she would grow this year. Not just tomatoes, but which varieties, how many plants of each kind, and when each variety would mature so the harvest would be staggered across the entire season. This is the first principle: intentional planting strategy. It is not about knowing how to can tomatoes perfectly. It is about engineering your entire garden so that you are not drowning in tomatoes all at once and then starving for them 3 months later. Some varieties of tomatoes ripen early in the season. Others are bred to produce steadily through midsummer. And some are specifically chosen because they mature late, giving you fresh fruit deep into fall when preservation becomes necessary. The same principle applies to beans, squash, peppers, cucumbers, root vegetables, everything. The week of preservation is not when the work happens. The week is when everything comes to a head at the same time because it was designed to. And here is where most homesteaders fail without even realizing it. They approach preservation as a solo task. They watch YouTube videos, they follow recipes, they think it is about mastering the technique. But when you watch an Amish family preserve food, you realize immediately that the work is not actually that complicated. What makes it fast, what makes it possible to preserve an entire year's supply in just 7 days, is that it is a completely different kind of event. It is a gathering. It is a communal workday, the same way a barn raising is. You do not raise a barn with one family and 4 hands. You raise it with the whole community showing up. And you do not preserve a year's food with one person canning in isolation. You do it with your mother, your sisters, your daughters, maybe a cousin or a neighbor. Each person has a role. One person is washing and preparing vegetables. Another is running the canning process. A third is labeling and storing the finished jars. Someone else is managing the fire or stove. Another is handling the next batch. The work does not feel like drudgery because you are not alone and because everyone knows what they are doing. But there is something even more important hiding underneath this organization, and this is where the real revelation comes in. The Amish wife, who can preserve an entire year's food in 1 week, is not actually doing anything your great-grandmother could not do, and could not teach you how to do in a single afternoon. The skill is simple. What takes the time, what takes the planning, what takes the intention, is the system. And that system starts not in the kitchen but in the mind. She has decided something that most modern people never truly decide, that feeding her family through an entire year is her responsibility. Not partially, completely. Not as an afterthought or a backup plan, completely. That decision changes everything. It changes which seeds she plants. It changes how she spends her spring and summer. It changes what she is willing to learn and master. It changes what she considers a failure and what she considers success. It changes whether she sees preservation work as a burden or as the most important work of her year. And because she has made that decision, she never panics, never rushes, never feels unprepared when August arrives. This is what separates a person who preserves food from a person who is in survival mode scrambling to preserve food. The Amish wife has already made the mental commitment. The physical work is almost secondary. Most modern homesteaders think the problem is that they do not know the techniques. So they buy books, they watch videos, they collect equipment, but in the middle of August, when the tomatoes are actually ready and the house is hot and they are overwhelmed, they panic. Because the real problem was never the technique, it was the mindset. You cannot preserve food you did not grow intentionally. You cannot can tomatoes in July if you planted your tomatoes without a preservation plan. You cannot fill a root cellar with winter squash if you did not plant 3 times the normal amount. You cannot have steady dried herbs all year if you did not plant herb gardens in spring specifically for drying. The Amish wife's single week of intense preservation is not actually the work. It is the harvest. The work was the 9 months before it, made invisible by habit and rhythm. And this is the part that changes everything for people who start to understand it. Because once you understand that, you understand that you do not actually need to wait until next August to start. You can start right now, this week, this moment. You can decide, truly decide, that you are going to feed your family through the next entire year from your own hands. And that decision, that single choice to commit, will change which seeds you order, which tools you gather, which skills you prioritize, and which people you invite into this work. And when next August arrives, you will not be panicking in the heat. You will be calmly, methodically, almost meditative in your movement through the kitchen, doing the work that you have been preparing for since January. That is the secret. That is what nobody talks about. So let's talk about what happens in those months before August even arrives. Because the Amish wives I have interviewed, and I have spent time with more than 30 families across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, they all say the same thing. Preservation season does not start in summer. It starts in January, sometimes earlier. In January, when the ground is frozen and the garden is dead, and most people are thinking only about staying warm, the Amish wife is thinking about seeds. She is reviewing her notes from the previous year. Which tomatoes produced the most fruit? Which beans dried the hardest without splitting? Which herbs stored longest in the cellar without losing flavor? She is comparing seed catalogs, many of them handwritten, passed down through families for decades, and making decisions, dozens of them. By February, the decisions are already becoming actions. She is ordering seeds, not from the big commercial companies that everyone else uses, but from small heritage seed savers, from other Amish families, from networks that have been trading seeds for 150 years or more. Because a seed that produces well in your soil, in your climate, in your specific growing season, is worth infinitely more than a beautiful seed from a catalog that may not thrive in your conditions. March is when planning becomes garden preparation. The soil is tested, not with expensive kits from a store, but with observation and knowledge. The Amish wife knows her soil. She knows which areas hold moisture too long and which drain too fast. She knows where the morning sun hits first and where shade lingers. She knows this because she has paid attention. Year after year, season after season, she has paid attention. Compost piles that were started in autumn are now being turned and worked into the beds. Manure from the animals has been aging in designated areas, and now it is ready to be spread. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a cycle. Everything has its season. And the Amish wife understands this cycle the way a musician understands a symphony. Every part matters. Every timing is crucial. And rushing even one section ruins the entire composition. By April, the seedlings are sprouted indoors. In most Amish homes, this is not done under expensive grow lights. Instead, it is done on south-facing windowsills, in cold frames, built from old storm windows, in simple structures that use only the sun. Some families use mild heat from the kitchen stove. No electricity, just proximity. The seedlings are strong because they are growing slowly, naturally, in conditions that teach them to be resilient. May arrives and the transplanting begins. This is where intuition meets knowledge. The Amish wife does not consult a calendar. Well, she does, because they do use calendars, but she does not rely on it alone. She looks at the ground. She feels the temperature of the soil with her hands. She observes the trees. Are the oak leaves the size of a squirrel's ear yet? That is when the last frost has truly passed. She knows this not from reading it somewhere, but because generations before her knew it, and they taught it to her, and she has proven it true in her own experience. June is when the first harvests begin. Lettuces, peas, early greens. The preservation work is not yet at full intensity. This is the time of tasting, of enjoying the earliest rewards of months of preparation. But already, the Amish wife is thinking ahead. She is noticing which lettuces lasted longest, which greens are toughest, what the yield actually was compared to her notes. She is adjusting. Already planning to plant succession crops, more seeds going into the ground every 2 weeks so that the harvest is not all at once, but staggered, manageable, sustainable. Wait, before we continue, I need you to understand something that most people completely miss about preservation. Hold on for a second. The reason that an Amish wife can preserve an entire year's worth of food in a single week is not because she is superhuman or because she has some secret technique that you cannot access. The real reason is that she has eliminated waste. Every single vegetable, fruit, and plant that she preserves has been chosen specifically for this purpose. Nothing is random. Nothing is excess. If you want to understand the deeper mechanics of how they choose which crops to preserve, how they know exactly which varieties will last longest in storage, how they time their planting and harvesting to create this 1-week preservation window, all of that is explained in depth in my complete Amish food preservation guide, which you can find in the description and in the pinned comment. That guide covers the variables, the decision-making process, and the exact calendar they use. It is the companion to everything I am showing you here. July is when everything accelerates. The full garden is producing now. Tomatoes are ripening rapidly. Beans are climbing their trellises and producing heavily. Peppers are swelling. Cucumbers are multiplying faster than anyone expected. The berries are at their peak. And the Amish wife is still not panicking because the infrastructure is already in place. The cellar has been cleaned and prepared. The jars have been gathered. Not purchased this year, but reused from the previous year. Sorted, cleaned, inspected for chips or cracks. The lids are ready. The sealing compound is prepared. The large pots for water bath canning are accessible. The pressure canner has been checked and is functional. The kitchen has been cleared of unnecessary items. Every surface is ready to become a processing station. And then August arrives. And in 1 week, sometimes less, the Amish wife and her family process everything that needs processing. The tomatoes become sauce, juice, salsa, and whole canned tomatoes. The beans become canned beans, dried beans, and frozen beans. The berries become jam, preserves, and frozen fruit for pies. The cucumbers become pickles, dill, sweet, spiced. The peppers become relish and canned pepper rings. The corn becomes canned corn, cornmeal, and dried corn. And because it is all happening in one concentrated week, because the family is focused entirely on this single task, because every person knows exactly what their role is, it does not feel chaotic. It feels like a dance. It feels like a ritual. It feels like the most important work in the world, because to an Amish family it is. But here is what I have learned from these families that changed how I think about preservation entirely. It is not just about the food. It is not even primarily about having enough to eat for the next 12 months, though of course that is part of it. It is about something much deeper. It is about security, yes, but not just food security. It is about the security of knowing that you are capable, that your hands can do this work, that you understand your relationship with the earth, with the seasons, with what it takes to feed yourself and your family. That knowledge changes you. That capability rewires your nervous system. The Amish wife does not worry about food in the way that modern people worry. She does not fret about supply chain interruptions or inflation or grocery store availability, not because she is naive or living in denial, but because she has proof. Every jar on that shelf is proof that she can provide for her family, that she has already done it, that she can do it again. And that is a kind of freedom that money cannot buy. Now, let me give you the secret I promised you at the beginning. The reason Amish wives can preserve an entire year's worth of food in a single week is not because they are superhuman or because they have some secret ingredient that modern people do not know about. It is not because they work faster or harder than you could work. It is not even because they have access to better equipment. The reason is this: they have separated the act of preservation from the act of consumption. Modern people preserve food accidentally, in fragments. You might can a few jars in March when the berries are cheap. You might freeze some vegetables in August. You might make a batch of pickles in September. It is scattered across the year, mixed in with all the other demands on your time. It is never the main event. It is never given the full weight of your attention and resources. But the Amish wife treats preservation season as a sacred season. Everything else pauses. The entire household, extended family, neighbors sometimes, aligns around the mission. We are going to preserve our year's food now. Not slowly, not casually, not when you have spare time. Now, fully, completely. That concentration of effort is what makes the impossible possible. When you compress weeks of scattered work into a single intense week, you unlock efficiencies that do not exist otherwise. You are not starting and stopping. You are not re-explaining the process to yourself. You are not losing momentum. You are flowing. And here is the deeper part. When you do this, when you compress your work into a season of pure focus, you teach your body and your mind something profound. You teach them that you are capable of sustained, skilled, meaningful work. You teach them that challenges can be mastered through preparation and intention. You teach them that you are not at the mercy of supply chains or seasons or circumstances. You are an agent in your own survival. This is why the Amish wife does not fear the future in the way that modern people fear it. It is not because she is religious in a way that removes her responsibility for provision. The Amish faith teaches that you prepare with all your might and then trust God with the outcome. Those are not in contradiction. They are partners. Preparation is not a lack of faith. It is the expression of faith. And it is not because she is wealthy or privileged or living in some idealized past that the rest of us cannot access. The Amish wife is often stretched thin. She has many children. She works hard every single day. Her life is not easy. But she has something that transcends those circumstances. She has proof of her own competence. She has touched the full cycle. She has seen the harvest. She has done the work. She has filled the shelves. And she will see it through to spring. That is not ideology. That is not luck. That is the result of 1 week of focused, intentional, skilled labor. The secret, then, is not technique. It is not equipment. It is not time management in the way we usually think about it. The secret is the willingness to concentrate, to say, this week, this is what matters most. Not forever, not always. But for this season, preservation is the priority. Every skill you have is pointed at this single goal. And when you do that, when you truly commit, when you clear away the noise and the competing demands and the half measures, everything becomes possible. You move faster because you are not switching contexts. You move better because you are not second-guessing yourself. You move with confidence because you have already committed to the work. That is the Amish wife's gift to us. Not a recipe, not a list of techniques, but a model of how to live with intention. How to move through a season with full presence. How to prepare without anxiety, and to trust without passivity. Most people spend their entire lives in the in-between, preparing half-heartedly, trusting in systems that are not under their control, always slightly worried about whether they have done enough. The Amish wife lives differently. She prepares fully for 1 week. Then she rests. She consumes with gratitude and without guilt. She knows what she has. She trusts what she has done. And that changes everything. Here is what I want you to do this week. Choose one preserved food that you eat regularly. Not a full preservation season. Not a complicated project. Just one thing. One jar of jam, or one batch of pickles, or one simple ferment. Make it yourself. Feel the process from beginning to end. Taste what you made. Notice how it feels different from something you bought. That single jar is the beginning. It is your proof. And from there, everything else becomes possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this insight valuable, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Because each week, we uncover forgotten skills and wisdom that your ancestors lived by. Leave a comment below and tell me, what is the first preservation technique you want to learn? I read every comment, and I would love to hear what speaks to you. And if you want the complete, in-depth guide to every preservation method the Amish use, the science behind it, the step-by-step instructions, the seasonal planning, it is all waiting for you in the description and in the pinned comment. I built it for people exactly like you who are ready to take this seriously. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.